Super Rugby Pacific transfers for the 2022 season. A fair few players coming and going. We'll go through the 12 squads for the season, see who's in, who's out. It's by no means an exhaustive list, just kind of a quick look at some of the key transfers. Do let us know which other guys you're excited to see or sad to see go. Apologies, I don't yet have the Drua or Moana Pasifika logos made up yet. I do have the Moana Pasifika jersey, which is pretty nice. But yeah, still yet to make up the logos. They'll be done before the competition kicks off next month, about just over a month ago. We'll start with some Aussie sides, the Brumbies. Brumbies have had a little bit in terms of guys coming and going, and it's the three backs that I'm kind of excited to see. Jesse Mogg returns to the Brumbies. Haven't seen him in Aussie rugby for a long time. Guy has got a big old boot. So keen to see that back in Aussie rugby after a few years away in France. Cam Clark's back from the MLR, so instead of coming back to the Waratahs, he's back with the Brumbies. No doubt he'll be out on the wing. And Chris Feau-Waisautia in the midfield, big block-busting ball carrier. Kind of wish he'd gotten a bit more game time in the Wallabies, but competitive area of the field. And yeah, I'm just pleased to see him back. Not with the Reds this time, but back with the Brumbies. Out. Mack Hansen is a big old loss. If you have been following the URC competition at all, that guy has been on absolute fire for Connacht. Unbelievable. He is a massive loss to Aussie rugby because he's just looked electric. Solomon Akata has left as well. He's off to Moana Pasifika. And Isaac Fines is off to the Force, so he at least stays in Aussie rugby. Speaking of the Force, Isaac Rodder's back. We've seen him in Wallaby Gold. He'll be in with the Force in 2022, which is pretty pleasing to see because their squad, yeah, it's starting to look particularly solid. I'm pretty happy for the Force. Bailey Kunzel's joining over from the Brumbies. It was kind of always a secondary guy for the Brumbies, so we'll see if he can get a bit more game time with the Force, maybe at 10 or 12. And then Manasa Mataele joins from the Crusaders. He'll be out on the wing and probably pushing for Fijian selection as well for his national team. Out, Domingo Miotti, the 10 is out, so maybe that's kind of part of the reason Bailey Kunzel is coming in. He's been off to Europe. Marcel Bruck, he's off to the MLR because remember he's American qualified and American player. And Tavita Kurandrani, after leaving the Brumbies, he was okay for the Force, but I still feel like probably time for him to move on because I can't see him getting back in the Wallabies. So yeah, fair few changes for the Force too. For the Rebels, Matt Phillips back from France. He's going to be tired because he's not really had any time off. You know, played in the Southern Hemisphere last year, then off to the North for a brief stint, and then now he's back for the season. I'm not sure what his availability will be like if he's got to finish the French season, but he's back on their listings. Moses Sorobi's joining from the Reds, and then Joe Pincus, the Sevens man. Not Tom Pincus, Joe Pincus has joined up, so it's kind of relatively stable stuff from the Rebels, but remember they do have a new coach because Dave Vessels has left. They've lost Naisarani. Corin Bete is probably the biggest loss to Japanese rugby, and then Dan Halapeti has had to retire with concussion issues, so we'll see how the Rebels can stack up. The Reds, interestingly, a bit reminiscent of when I've looked at these squads for the Crusaders in the past, and there's not a lot of comings that I'm that aware of. A lot of kind of guys being brought through the club system, which tends to be what the Crusaders have done in recent years. They'll lose a few guys, but they don't really import players from other teams. They just bring them through the ranks. That seems to be what the Reds are doing. They have brought in Tom Liner from the Quins system in the UK. Remember, his brother has been playing for Harlequins. So, yeah, he's an interesting prospect. They have lost Brendan Paengamosa to Montpellier. Sorovi's joined the Rebels, and Bryce Heckerty's off with Leicester. So, seems to be one of those ones where some of the senior guys leave and they bring through the youth. So I'm kind of keen to see if you got any insights into the club rugby scene in Queensland. Do let us know about some of the guys that Brad Thorne's got his eye on. And then the Waratahs, it's the opposite, man. They got so many comings and goings. It's phenomenal. Not in a good way. They've got Michael Hooper back for Japan, which is great. I'm a little disappointed for Carlo Tizzano in case he doesn't get any game time, because that guy's a tackling machine, but plays the same position. Ned Hannigan's back from Japan. I'm sure all Australian fans will rejoice at the return of Big Ned. Maybe being a little bit facetious. And then Ruan Smith's joining off from the MLR, the prop. So, yeah, I think he's a solid scrummager, so I'm kind of pleased to see him there as well. Jacks are not popular in Waratahs land. Jack Maddox, I forgot he was leaving. Jack Maddox off to France. Jack Dempsey off to Scotland, where he's maybe Scotland eligible. And Jack Wetton also off to France. So all the Jacks on their way out. So no Jack for the Waratahs. But yeah, their number of transfers is huge. Doesn't speak well to their season, to be honest, because it's generally chemistry and keeping things consistent to a degree that's important while making minor tweaks, like what you see from the Reds, rather than kind of wholesale changes. But speaking of wholesale changes, the Drua, they've had to assemble a squad out of nothing. Some of these guys will know each other from either Fiji duty, Sevens duty, or the NRC Fiji and Drua team. So, I mean, some of the guys they brought in look pretty good. They got Manasa Solo, I've got his name on the board. The prop, very experienced, played at international level a lot, so I'm kind of keen to see how he goes. They've got Mesu Tolakoto, again, Fiji capped, been around the blocks, played in Europe for ages, so certainly another veteran. And then Tetitela is also there. He's the guy that, I think he's played once for Fiji for the Barbars. Never got like an official cap, but people talk about him like he should be the guy playing 10 ahead of like Vola. But he's been playing, I think, club rugby in Australia. So I'm keen to see how he goes in a fully kind of professional environment as well. So that's your Aussie teams plus the Drua. On the Kiwi side of the draw, the Blues, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck by a mile is the most exciting prospect for Blues fans. Former rugby league kind of legend for the Warriors. What position he fits in best is going to be one that remains to be seen, likely in the midfield. The return of Bodie Barrett is also pretty good news. And then in terms of the youth front, Anton Segner, the German, German guy who's been in the New Zealand system for a few years, loose forward, so heaps of potential, kind of keen to see if he can step up at Super Rugby level as well. But we've lost a few guys, Patrick Tupulotu, Gerard Kauli Tuioti, so we're a little bit lacking for depth at lock, and then Otere Black's headed off to Japan as well, but that's kind of cancelled out by the fact that we got Bodie back. Moana Pasifika, again, their squad's kind of formed out of nothing, so it's a heap of guys, but some of the guys to look out for, Ray Niuya, the former Blues hooker, he's pretty solid, so it's a good signing for Moana Pasifika. They've got Henry Stowers, who has been really good for the Brumbies, kind of very physical, loose forward, an international player as well. And then Neri Formai, again, another international player for Samoa, winger, so a bit of a big unit, and kind of keen to see how he goes at Super Rugby level. They've got some other guys, they've got Lincoln McClutchy from Hawke's Bay, who's not actually Tonga or Samoa or Fiji qualified, but he's one of their kind of other picks, so it'll be interesting to see how they kind of divvy up the game time with the guys who are qualified for the next level. Well, not remember Aaron Major's the coach for them, so it's a good test for him after the Highlanders let him go. The Chiefs, not too much in the way of acquisitions. Brodie Retallick's back from Japan. That's a bit of good news for the big lock. Josh Ioane was released, I think, early from his contract from the Highlanders to join the Chiefs. Maybe a change of scenery is necessary for him to kind of get back on track after seemingly kind of tracking really well as that next choice 10 for the All Blacks, maybe like third guy in the pecking order. The wheels kind of came off a bit, some off-field stuff a bit disruptive, but hopefully the Chiefs can get him focused. And then Narawa signed from the Blues, so a good signing in terms of some depth building for the outside backs. Lachlan Boshier is a massive loss to both the Chiefs and New Zealand Rugby. Loose forward, wins a million turnovers, makes tackles like a demon, but not wanted by the All Blacks, so he's off to Japan. Damian Mckenzie, likewise, short-term deal off to Japan. And then Tatoira Tahuriarangi is off to the Crusaders, which is an interesting signing because I got him on the board for the Crusaders as well. He's behind Bryn Hall and Mitch Drummond, so it's a tough place to get a gig, but we'll see how he goes. Also, Pablo Matera is a big signing for the Crusaders. Remember, they've lost a couple of loose forwards. They've lost Fetu Douglas, Tom Sanders. So they have some depth to replace. But as I said, the Crusaders tend to have it in spades. Kenny Naholo has signed up. He's been electric at Mitre 10 level before. Famous name, obviously, Naholo. But yeah, never had injury-free run to kind of get a crack at Super Rugby level, so we'll see if the Crusaders can get him right. Michael Allentown has left for Leinster, so they're missing a bit in the propping stocks, and Brett Cameron, who never kind of escaped the shadow of Richie Mo'unga, has left for Japan as well. Highlanders legendary Marty Banks is back, so they'll be kind of very pleased to see him. He's going to obviously fill the gap with Josh Ioane leaving, although maybe that Banks signed was the key to Josh Ioane leaving, I'm assuming. Gareth Evans is there, joins from the Hurricanes. Kind of a chance to refresh his career after that one All Blacks cap as well. And then Andrew Makaleo joins from the Crusaders. So a nice kind of bit of hooker depth as well, because they have lost Ash Dixon, legendary Highlander, so he's on the board. He's off to Japan. Joshua, like I mentioned, and then Kazuki Himeno was never going to be around for much more than a year or a season. So yeah, he's been back to Japan. So as I said, he is away. The Hurricanes have signed some experience. Owen Frank's back from his stint in Europe, getting a bit long in the tooth, and maybe not quite the prop that he was when he left. At least Northampton fans told me that, basically, that yeah, he wasn't at his full form, but hopefully return to New Zealand will see him kind of rejuvenated back to his best that we know from him. Tough scrummage and prop. Dominic Bird also back from France. He was actually doing really well in France. I was pretty pleased to see him playing for Racing when I was watching the European games. And then Blake Gibson has left the Blues to join the Hurricanes, because the loose forward stocks were well crowded at the Blues. So yeah, hopefully he can get some proper game time at the Canes. They've lost Via Fafita to Wasps, and the guy's been on fire. Like, as much as I mentioned Mack Hansen was a big loss to Aussie rugby, Via Fafita has honestly just been setting the world alight for Wasps, so that seems like a big miss. He wasn't even really getting game time for the Hurricanes last year, maybe because they knew he was leaving. Nani Lamapi obviously is a big loss. He's off to France, and Ricky Riccatelli has joined the Blues. So yeah, a little bit of depth building for the Blues with Nuia leaving for Moana Pasifika. But there you go. Those are kind of some of the key transfers from all the teams. The Reds looking pretty stable, which I tend to think of as a good sign. Heap of transfers tends to mean it's going to be time to be doing a bit of rebuilding. So I'm looking at the Waratahs for that one, and also the two new teams. But yeah, I would say the Drua guys probably know each other a bit better just generally compared to the Moana Pacific guys. But we'll see. They've got the preseason to go to get themselves ready. Like I said, it's far from an exhaustive list. This video could have been a lot longer if we wanted to look at every single player. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts on who you are kind of pumped to see. I haven't seen enough of the Mitre 10 Cup in recent years to comment too much about some of the guys coming through. But do let me know also who you are pumped to see from that aspect as well. Because there'll be surely some kind of breakthrough guys who really make a name for themselves in 2022. But yeah, mid-February is the kickoff of this competition. Hopefully it's going to be a good one. You guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.